from 13 to 17, it was a rapid downward spiral of all the alcohol, all the drugs, crime, gang activity. Um, what kind of tipped my father off was my grades started to go. I had been an honor roll student up until that time.
So I'm just going to kick this off. I want to welcome everybody to today's podcast. This is episode 2. And my guest today is JoJo Mikolazyk. Did I say it right?
Good job.
Well, I practiced it, and I saw you do a couple of your talks from earlier this week, and the guests, you were being asked, so I made sure I got it. So my guest today is JoJo Mikolazyk, and I met JoJo through Rapid Transformational Therapy by Marissa Peer at an event in November of 2021. We were both graduates of RTT, and it was just a great opportunity to meet and greet with other alumni. What's been so interesting to me about meeting other alumni from this program is we're all different. We all bring something very unique and very different to the space, and we all came into RTT for different reasons.
Right.
I personally came into RTT because I work with a lot of patients that are coming to me because they're ready to resolve trauma. They're at that point. And I really want to help them get full resolution of whatever the byproduct is of the trauma, however it's showing up in their life. And I love the fact that I have this tool to do it by way of hypnosis and rapid transformational therapy. I was really drawn to JoJo because her interest goes into a space that I'm not in. It's really kind of multidimensional. She's a practitioner of many different kinds of modalities, which we're going to share today. But I think one of the things that was most awe-inspiring to me about JoJo was her story. And the reason that I put this podcast together, This Meaningful Life, is because we all have unique stories, and those stories are usually encased in challenge. And JoJo has been very open about her challenges. She shared that challenge with me on the side. And I just thought this is a story that other people need to hear, because to me, it's a true rising from the ashes situation and then taking it beyond. So I'm just going to read this here so we get it right. JoJo, before I have her introduce herself, let me just tell you a little bit about her. She created a company called Ascension Together, and that was launched in 2021. And the hopes of Ascension Together is to mend the fractured self back to fullness. And I love that. She says that we're all whole, but she helps you put the fractures back together so that you can redeem this fullness and shine your brightest. So welcome, JoJo.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all you do, and that we have a place to find good news in the world. We need more good news outlets.
We sure do. So JoJo, why don't you take a moment and just share a little bit about yourself with us, and we'll just let that lead right into your story.
Great. So currently I live on Cape Cod, married with one beautiful child, and I've been in the recovery community here. In May will be 22 years. And I've, as a person in recovery, it was very natural for me to work with people in recovery and serve a purpose through that channel. And I did that for many years. And then leading up to 2021, I started to feel the need to work with, I say, anyone and everyone, not just us miraculous souls in recovery, but I really felt a need to serve the masses. And as a licensed clinical social worker at the time, graduate of Simmons Social Work School, I had the training and the credentials to do that, but not as much as the flow or experience with many different neuroses or things that bother us as people, right? The density that we can start to kind of fall into when life happens, and traumas, and you called them challenges, I call them initiations. They're part of the initiations of our soul in our ascension process. And I found the beautiful Marissa Peer, as you did,
Mhm.
and it gave me an incredible platform to really connect with any and every human
Yeah.
in whatever they're looking to transform, to alchemize, to transcend. And I love it. I love working, no preference really. No gender doesn't apply. It's whoever ends up in my chair is divine intervention.
I feel exactly the same way. And, we're business owners on top of
Yeah.
being practitioners. In your case, you're a licensed clinical social worker. And what people don't understand is that as entrepreneurs, we don't get to just help. We
Right.
also have to run our businesses,
That's right.
right? And so often when we're building our business, we're asked, well, what's your niche or what's your niche? And I have always been against that, actually,
Same.
because in my opinion, I have things I'm drawn to, and I have very specific types of people that are drawn to me,
That's right. They
right?
find us.
They find us, and I put out spiritually the type of people I want to really work with.
Yeah.
And a lot of people avoid the space that I'm in because it's not the prettiest, right? It's that deep, dark, ugly,
Yes.
because I really do work with a lot of intense trauma or narcissistic abuse. But my feeling is if you're coming across my path,
Mm.
then there's something that we're supposed to be healing together. And so I don't really niche myself out and call myself any one particular type
Right.
of practitioner or coach, because if you have the guts and the courage and you're ready to walk the path or go into the dark forest, like I call it,
Yeah.
I'll be your guide,
That's
right?
right.
I'll walk right beside you. So speaking of dark forests, you've walked through some pretty scary places. And I'm asking you to share it because what you've been through and what you've gone through as a human is very hard. And I think it's really important that we talk about the hard things that we've gone through, not pretend like they didn't exist. Because someone's going to watch this. When we talk about the people that come across our path, there's going to be someone that watches this that either sees your story in themselves or they see it in a loved one.
Yeah.
And either they're stuck themselves or their loved one is stuck. And so I really am hoping maybe you'll get vulnerable and raw and real with us and share with us a little bit about your personal transformation, your initiation, your story.
Sure. Thank you. So I usually start with childhood because that's where we all go back to, right? RTT really drives that home.
Yeah.
And I always present that I grew up in almost three realities. I was co parented by my grandparents who were from Cuba, very traditional, religious, and my dad, who's Jewish American business owner, and they did a fantastic job. And this, my grandparents were the maternal grandparents. My mother could not be in the equation of the parenting because of substance use, so she was not physically or mentally available. But because of the structure of the home we lived in Boston, it was a double decker. So while I was upstairs in this beautiful, loving, nurtured community home environment, the downstairs of that double decker was my mom.
Mm.
And it was, you're not allowed to go down there. It was the police banging on the door all hours of the night and different stuff like that. But when you have a child right upstairs from their mom, it's very, well, at least for me, it was like, there's no way I'm not going to see my mom. So I learned very young when my grandparents would fall asleep, little JoJo would be finding ways to slide across the kitchen floor without making noise, turning the doorknob to get downstairs without making noise. Because I wanted to be around my mom. And eventually, I think, yes, I wanted to be with my mom, but there was a party there. There was all sorts of characters and music and energy. And it was also fun. It was like a circus because places you frequent where there's alcohol and drugs and partying, I guess to a kid, it looks kind of circus like.
May I ask how old was your mom?
So my mom had me when she was 34.
Mm.
She was not introduced to narcotics until I was 3 or
Okay.
2.5, I would say. Um, when that happened, she chose to not be with my father anymore, which was devastating to him. He was very in love with her,
So they
but
were married when you were born?
they weren't married. She did not want to be married.
Okay.
And he always would he was the one that was at every school assembly, every awards, you know, Saturday 10 a.m. on the dot, he was there outside waiting for me and dropped me off Monday morning to school. It was the epitome of availability in a
Mm.
father, to the opposite extreme of a mom where I didn't know in what condition I was going to find her. I don't have a memory of her sober. I don't have a memory of her bathing me or feeding me or doing any of the maternal stuff. So anyway, like fast forward, I get to like 10 or 11 and now I'm like really resentful and I'm calling her names and the hurt and rage kind of started to build up. And then there was a shift. There was almost like acknowledgement that nothing I said to her, nothing I did was going to change her condition. So it was almost like at 12, it was like, well, if you can't beat them, join them. And that's when I
Mm.
started to pick up the substances. And then we could bond. We had something in common.
Mhm, mhm.
And that continued throughout my teenage years.
Did you feel like she saw you when you started using with her, or did she not see you, but it just allowed you to get just a little bit physically closer to her?
It was just the physical closeness, the bond. She was always very loving. She would be like enamored over me. And when I would go downstairs, she would be like, look at my beautiful daughter, and like present me to all her friends and stuff like that. I never felt unloved in a mean or mental abuse or emotional abuse, what we would think of. You know, there was never harshness. It was just complete unavailability
Yeah.
mentally to show up or physically, emotionally. Um, I tried to do ballet for a while when I was a child, and she just could not get me to the classes.
Mhm,
You know, there was a
mhm.
lot of
And was
things.
she working, JoJo, or no?
No, no,
Okay.
she collected. I think at least from what I could remember, she never had a job.
So around 11, 12, 13, you decide if I can't beat them, join them,
Yeah, and I mean that
right?
the lifestyle had been normalized for so long.
So what
And
was that lifestyle? Because I really want it to be clear to
mhm.
people what that lifestyle was, like as clear as you can make it.
Yeah, so the lifestyle that I saw down there in the third world, right? Because we're
Yeah.
living in 3 worlds now, 3 identities. Uh, we know that when children are young, they wanna appease the caregiver. Now I have 3 caregivers to live up to and appease. Talk about fractures.
Mm.
Uh, chameleon, right? So the lifestyle downstairs was, I guess, in our modern terms, we call it a trap house.
Yeah.
Um, there's many different terms for it, but what you would see when you walk in is um, things in disarray. Maybe stray animals that have been brought in. There was a uncleanliness to the home. There wasn't food cooking, but there was crack cooking on the stove, right? There's any particular drug dealer set up in the kitchen for that night. There was spare rooms being occupied by prostitutes.
Mhm.
There was, I'd come home from school, and if I found my way through there, instead of the Disney Channel, it was Spice Channel or Playboy.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So that was the lifestyle presented to me from a very sick and unwell biological mother.
So, at what point did you start integrating yourself into that space on a more frequent basis?
I think it started just after school, smoking cigarettes with her. No one was there yet. It was 3:30 in the afternoon, so she was finally awake from the night before. She wouldn't get to bed till 5, 6 in the morning. And it would kind of be that nice calm, she's hungover, and we'd have a cigarette together, play backgammon or Uno.
And how old are you?
12.
12. Mhm. And by the
And
way, how old is your child now?
Alana is 10 and a half, she will let you know. Yay, sorry, we're still getting used to the non-binary terms.
Yes.
They would let you know 10 and a half.
Okay. And I only ask because when you say 12, I have a son that's 13 and a son that's older. And I just think to myself, oh my goodness. Like
Can you
think of your
imagine?
child.
No.
Yeah.
Can you
No.
imagine?
No.
Completely different realities.
Right. So you're 12, 13. You're now finding ways to connect with your mom by way of
Yes.
cigarettes and what have you. What happens from there?
From there, it becomes very apparent. Well, and it had been for years. I can't bring any friends home.
Right.
My home isn't, I would go to other friends' houses and they would be clean and organized and put together and cooking meals and what I experienced on the weekends and vacations with dad. But I was living my school days building a community during the week, not at dad's. I didn't have the luxury of leaving school, bringing friends to a wonderful, clean, safe home. There were many times I was playing in my little concrete yard and find a plastic nip bottle that had been converted into a crack pipe.
Hmm.
So I was very aware that this was different, this was bad. I can't expose other children to this. So eventually, what we do is when we feel that different and inferior, what is the saying? Water seeks its own level. What
Hmm.
I find the friends who live in homes like I did.
Mm.
So, and also when we make an intention to the universe, our vibe attracts our tribe, right?
So what was your intention, you think?
To to have a community and support like me,
And ultimately not to be different.
and not to be different and not to feel less than and inferior by my peers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm writing down here all the things, at no time have you said you've been abused in the sense of being violated
Sure,
up to this point.
sure.
You're not talking about sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, but what people don't understand that trauma can be not feeling safe.
Yeah,
Trauma can be feeling different.
Yeah.
Trauma can be having 3 homes, but feeling completely alone and
Yeah.
disconnected and ultimately not feeling enough. And on top of all of that, secret keeping, immense
Right.
secret keeping. You're
Immense.
leaving, you're keeping secrets from your father,
Yeah.
you're keeping secrets from your grandparents, you're
Yep.
keeping secrets from your school, all the places that you're spending the most amount of time. You cannot be fully authentic about how you feel or what you're experiencing.
Correct.
And that's traumatic.
Right.
And so when I'm working with people, they don't understand, but I had a great life in the sense that nothing ever bad happened to me. When they say to me, they really mean to their being.
Right.
But they're ignoring that all of these other things, the secret keeping, the feeling alone, the feeling different, that's a big one.
Mm,
The body will process that as trauma because it doesn't feel safe.
that's right. Yeah.
So you start attracting other people who might feel the same way or who you see as different, right?
Yeah. Or living in the same conditions.
And so what ends up happening from there?
So what ended up happening from there is I did meet a lot of the same like-minded youth, but just aside from that group of friends, I was randomly asked to go to a different friend's house after school, and we were going to drink for the first time. And that is when my first tremendous physical sexual trauma happened. I had never drank before. It was all hard liquor. There was a number of individuals there that were from a different part of town and had some type of gang affiliation. And I was drinking out of the bottle, not knowing how much to drink, what to drink, when to drink. I was kind of really just like awkwardly, doing what I saw adults do. And I would say within 30 minutes, I was in a complete blackout, unconscious. And I woke up several hours later at Boston Children's Hospital, bleeding from my head, my neck, below the waist, all type of bodily fluids on me, marks, bruises, bites.
Mm.
And I think it is the grace of God that I don't have memories because I was
Mhm.
so blacked out and unconscious. But I will say, when I came to the next day, and this was a very symbolic of alcoholism and how it triggers or expresses itself neurologically, mind, body, spirit, physically, genetically. Or it was a part of my DNA passed on from my mom, her her father, which would be my biological grandfather.
Who was part of the
No,
trifecta raising you?
no, my grandmother remarried before she left Cuba. She did that right 100%. So
Okay,
my biological grandfather stayed in Cuba as well because he worked for Castro. So
fair
I
enough.
I never met him, but from what I was told from my mom, he was severely abusive, alcoholic, into Santeria, dark
Mm.
magic, a lot of different things. So what I really sticks out to me the next day when I came to and I'm aware of what happened to me, the doctors tell me what happened. It's almost like I disassociated from what had happened, and all I could think of was that feeling right before blacking out that was like everything was wonderful for the first.
Euphoria.
It was euphoria. And what would have been a huge signpost to someone who's not an alcoholic to never drink again, I could not wait to drink again
Mhm.
despite what happened because it gave me immense freedom and peace in those few moments. That's the sign of a true alcoholic.
Yeah. And so you're what age at this point?
So that was 12 years old.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
From 13 to 17, it was a rapid downward spiral of all the alcohol, all the drugs, crime, gang activity. Um, what kind of tipped my father off was my grades started to go. I had been an honor roll student up until that time. And
It is such a high sign. And my question, I'm going to interrupt you. Was the school saying anything to your father about that?
he would get the report cards and start to realize something
But
was.
but beyond that, this is the alert that the schools
Mhm.
need to be proactive on. I'm just curious of whether or not they were picking up on the decline.
They may have, and I wasn't aware of those conversations.
Mhm.
Um, from the grade of 7th, 8th, ninth, it was a different school every year now. Now it was private school. Now it was an all girls Catholic school, and he's Jewish, right? So
Oh my goodness
dad is
gracious.
really, really trying to intervene here, and then it's a boarding school away in Maine. And eventually the boarding school, after a couple years of my antics, did reach out to him, kind of every few months it would be an issue. I would be in-house suspended, or I would be really suspended, and then eventually they asked me to leave. And it was at that point where my dad, for probably his own sanity and his own sake, to take control back of his peace and his life, had to pretty much disown me.
Yeah, I was going to say let go.
Yeah. And thank God he did, because it took 6 months for me to hit my bottom after that.
Mhm.
It was necessary.
Mhm. And so explain to everybody what the bottom was.
Okay. So the bottom was me having no responsibilities, no school, no job at 16. I eventually took a bus back to Boston, um, using every day. My uh, sleep cycle was very similar to my mom's now.
Mhm.
I would get to bed 5, 6 in the morning, sleep all day, wake up, start it again. Now, with the necessity to pay for these substances and
Mm.
lifestyle, and that brought me down a road of some criminal activity that eventually I served 4 years in prison for.
Mhm.
And
I'm
that's.
taking a deep breath because your story is big. It's intense, and I am very honored that you're so open and sharing it with us. Um, because I think it's so important for people to see how far you had to rise. When I say you're coming up from the ashes, I think it's really important. Everybody's bottom is different,
Mhm.
right? So tell me what happened, and you don't need to give into details, but once you're incarcerated, um, are you thinking at that moment, okay, I want to get clean, or are you still getting high when you're in jail?
No, when I woke up in the jail cell the next morning, I had been on my knees praying for so long the night before that I had fallen asleep in that position with the concrete kind of bench there. When the court officers came to bring me up to the judge in the morning, because I had fallen asleep kneeling, my legs were completely dead. They had fallen asleep under me, and I could not even walk, and they had to drag me up there. So, on top of just being in this completely physically degraded state, mentally, emotionally, now I had been using daily for 6 months straight. Um, I also did not know how much time I was going to serve.
Mhm.
And it was very sobering. I
Mm.
couldn't get out of it. I couldn't pay my way out of it. I couldn't, there wasn't a loophole. There wasn't a manipulation I could serve. That there was no out. And I it took months to kind of even process what my new reality was.
I have a question for you. Who was in the courtroom when you met the judge for
That
for
first
this?
morning.
Mhm.
So, two people that are friends of the family who work for my father's business because my father was away across the country
Mm.
when they picked me up.
And your mother,
No.
your grandparents.
No, they didn't have a vehicle. I don't even know if they had been informed yet that I had been
Mhm.
picked up. I was on the run for a month and a half.
Okay. I just think it's so crucial and important for people to understand how those little tiny pieces,
Mm.
somebody just standing behind you,
Yeah.
shift everything,
Yep.
right? Because you're already feeling so alone. You're already walking with a tremendous amount of shame. You're already feeling all the things, the worthlessness, the not enough, all of the things that we're trying to numb out, right? And to have to go through that experience somewhat alone
Oh, yeah.
is maybe one of the most sobering pieces of it.
Yeah. No, and to this day, those two gentlemen that were in that courtroom, it shifted our relationship from not just guys who work for my dad, but as I consider them brothers.
Yeah. I just got a chill.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
forever. I mean, they text me every Mother's Day now that I'm a mom,
Mm.
birthdays, every holiday. It's really special.
One of the reasons why I wanted you on is because this story is very special.
Thank you.
You know, it, when I talk about, when I think about the guests that I want to have, the idea of this meaningful life, meaning you went through something that put purpose to your life, right?
Yeah.
So when
Absolutely.
did you realize that there was purpose in this pain and that there was going to be a gift in this challenge?
Actually, behind the walls, I started to do some work with other women around the Alcoholics Anonymous textbook when it was clear to me that I wasn't a piece of shit and I wasn't evil and I wasn't a bad person, that I had a disease of addiction and alcoholism. It was a tremendous freedom. And it was kind of like that first part of the fractures coming together for me.
And how long did it take you to get to that realization that you were not evil and that this was a disease that you were battling?
I would say about 6 months in, it started
Okay.
to feel better for me,
Mhm.
who I was. Because a lot of times when we're in active addiction, this is said over and over again. And if they aren't saying it, when they hear it, they identify it with it. We feel like we don't have a consciousness. Like we're not, like we don't have a conscious, like a Jiminy Cricket, because the drug and the addiction is making all the choices for us.
Mm.
So when you go around feeling like you don't have a conscience, right? That kind of puts you into a category of like those people you've seen on documentaries or movies, that there's some real psychosis going on.
Mhm.
And truly, my dad at one point thought that and put me into a local mental health center here. And they sent me to Gosnold because they identified No, she's not mentally broken. She's really addicted to substances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you were in jail, I'm just curious, is that when you found that your desire to help heal others started to kick in?
Yeah, yeah, and, once I really owned that identity, that's where I felt the presence of God when I was helping others, where I started to feel like a fire was kind of going in my belly. I was helping, I was serving, I was a path with purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
It made the reality I was in manageable for me because I could still show up, try to be my best self. Now I'm at this time going through immense modalities and healings in my own private time with therapists. You know, I say
This
I've
is
done
in jail.
in jail. Yeah.
Okay.
Um and then after that I continued. I've So in jail, I did like all the ABCs for PTSD, right? The
Mm.
CBT, DBT, mindfulness, right? Because what I had was chronic, severe PTSD
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
from the age of 3.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And then after jail, I join a 12-step program. I'm really involved in that. That becomes my new community of like-minded people, another outlet to serve. And eventually I get into breath work because now we got to move this out of the body.
Yeah.
I do all the trauma healing for the brain, and now it's just stuck in the
Stuck
body.
in the body.
So I'm doing breath work, I'm doing movement, fitness, things that empower me and strengthen me.
I listened to Bezel van der Kolk's talk the other day. I was on a book club and he came on and did a Q&A and he was talking about the importance of movement. And
Okay.
he said that, and it was kind of like a mind blow, like, oh, I never put two and two together, that the idea of feeling like you're a nobody
Great.
really makes you feel so disconnected that you feel like you have no body that you belong to.
Right. We disassociate from our physical body, which disconnects us from intuition and the spirit.
Right. So you're in this cavernous space. You feel not enough. You feel like a nobody. And you also feel physically disconnected from your body.
That's
And he
right.
was talking about the idea of movement giving you a body to have to work with, somebody, just
Right.
somebody.
I love that.
It was so like, and like when he said it,
Um,
I was like, wait, what?
mm,
Like, it's so clear, but I had never put it in that term. And the
yep,
idea that you're physically having to move in a body, anybody,
right.
somebody making you into somebody. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Beautiful.
It was
That's
like
so beautiful.
so well
Mhm.
said. The way he said it was not necessarily as graceful as he was when he
Yes.
shared it, but it was one of those mind blown moments that as a practitioner, I'll never forget that concept because I'm not someone that has, I don't think I've ever, I think I would know. I've never fully disassociated, but
Yeah.
I have family members that I see it happening on the spot.
Yes.
And it's scary when you see it in somebody.
Yeah.
Luckily, I recognize why that's happening and why they do it,
Yeah.
right? But unless someone's been through that, they don't really understand what that looks like. It's almost like you're levitating out of your body and
Right.
you kind of go blank, right?
Yeah.
And it really is the body's way of trying to protect you.
Yeah. Or process not or and process the immense energetic density that is living within your body, and physically it has to integrate it
And
in
it
this
can't.
reality, and it cannot.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, woman. So you go from everything you've just described to then getting out of jail at what, 21?
Yep.
Do you have a high school degree?
I was able to have an incredible education liaison woman find a high school, the only high school in Boston that would award me a diploma with her advocacy that we were doing work
While you were in jail?
while I was in jail. Was
So
the
beyond a GED, this was an actual diploma from a high school. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yeah, I do have a physical high school diploma, and that was the Jeremiah Burke School. That was the only school that would give it to me.
Mm. Isn't it amazing if these angels that come into our space and they just
Every
fight for
day.
us
Every day.
and advocate for us? And
Yes.
so you have this physical diploma
Yeah.
and you go from there to becoming a licensed clinical social worker.
Well, I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker now as I passed the exam last month. But even coming out, JoJo didn't know who JoJo was yet.
Of course not.
My associates was in pre-law because all my friends needed lawyers
Oh, sweet.
who were still behind walls, right?
You're like, I'm going to fight for you.
Right?
I'm going to be your advocate.
My
Yeah, I got it.
bachelor's was in philosophy and political science because if I won't practice law, but I'll change the law. We'll start to change laws, right? And I got really big into activism and advocacy and food transparency movement. I brought my family into the Boston Commons to march on Monsanto in
Oh my
2014.
gosh, yes.
Like, and then as I continued to kind of drop into my body and me as a being, one thing was clear, I was going to help, but it was the master's in social work because it was there's no substitute for me than helping in a one-on-one session.
Yeah. Yeah.
I run classes through Ascension together. We have events, and that's like the fun stuff. But there's nothing else that does it for me as sitting one-on-one with someone.
Well, and from my point of view, from my seat, that makes so much clear sense because you had no one. You had your dad. Your dad was trying his best.
Yeah.
In the circumstance that he was like so outnumbered, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I can understand the power of you wanting to be that person for someone in a moment of crisis because we want to give what we never received.
Yes.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah. And I want to, like, I feel, we're hypnotherapists. I feel like I dehypnotize people from the programming that they've been fed from authority, caregivers, institutions, indoctrinations. I'm like the dehypnotizer so that you
God, I want to give you a high five for that.
What up, girl?
It's the unbecoming.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a talk given the other month about, especially in our age group, 40s, 50s, 60s, we're all trying to figure out who we are and become what it is that we are and fall into our authenticity finally and for all. And the speaker was saying, we're not becoming anything. We're unbecoming everything we've learned up to this point.
That's right. That's right.
And I was like, that was another one of those aha moments this year. I was like, never forget that one either, because that's really what I'm doing with all of my clients as a hypnotherapist.
Right.
It's what lens were you looking at your past 30, 40, 50 years through?
Yeah.
Let's go back and find out what happened in that moment that you created the core belief through which you were seeing that lens, and realizing you don't need it anymore. You're not that person anymore.
That's not me.
It's not me. And going through all the exercises that you and I are trained on to really help the person at their subconscious mind see, I'm actually fully whole, and I'm actually okay, and I'm actually safe, and I'm not alone. Yes. And all the things that lead up to someone feeling the way that they end up feeling to create the core belief that's no longer serving them. Right.
Right. And
I
that's
love
why
that.
I love your title, Mind Flipper,
Uh, Thank you.
right?
You know what? It's so funny because I just, at some point, I kept saying to people, flip your mindset, flip your mindset. I would say, flip your shit, like flip it. You got to flip it. You got to flip it. You got to flip it. And in 2019, I was working with somebody that specializes in brand marketing, and we were having a conversation. And she said, I think you need to grab a URL really fast. I just feel this calling to tell you, you need a website and you need to grab a URL. And I was like, okay. And so she's like, I want you to write down a whole bunch of ideas and we're going to buy a bunch of them. And I was like, sure. And Flip Your Mindset came up. And I was like, oh, I love that. Like that's, yeah, I'm going to just buy that, which is my website now, flipyourmindset.com.
Yeah.
And it all clicked. I'm like, that's really what I do. I'm just a mindset flipper. And that's actually, it's on my card. It says mindset flipper.
But how powerful, like that's just what I do. You're helping someone facilitate the flip from negative to positive, from pain,
from lie to reality.
Right. From fear to love.
Yeah.
We are alchemists, Stacey. That's what we do.
Yeah.
It's just not called that.
No, but we can call it whatever we want and whatever fits with the person that we're speaking to.
That's right.
Right. But the goal, and I think generally you and I have the same philosophy, which is we're just seeking people to feel the peace we didn't get at that particular time in our life. Right. We are able to see the benefit of our challenges.
Yep.
They were very challenging, but we were able to see the benefit of them. I don't know how you feel, but I would say I take nothing from my journey now, as Maya Angelou would say. And I know your journey was very different from mine, but I feel strongly that had I not experienced the things I experienced, I wouldn't be able to serve and heal in the way that I can.
Oh, 100%.
I would have no reference point.
I call it all divine design.
I call it divine intervention. Yeah. And I actually say to people, my little mantra is life is a series of experiences divinely designed for you.
That's right.
Period. Yeah. Don't call them heartache. Don't call them challenges. Don't call them ups, downs, good, bad, positives, whatever. That's meaning that you're putting onto something. The things that have been presented to us in our life that have been the most challenging have been our greatest teachers. Yes. And when life is good and happy and content, those are not the moments that force us to get onto our knees and learn about ourselves.
Amen.
Right? So when I used to do these workshops on resilience, I would have somebody write down a story. I'd have them journal out a story and then write down how they felt in that moment, like transport yourself. What were the things you were feeling about yourself in that moment? And then how do you look at that experience today and how did you shift? What did it cause in you? Self-reliance, self-resilience, awareness. There's always something that comes out of the challenge.
I love that word shift too, because a good friend of mine, Kristen Johnston, owns Quantum Health and Wellness in Seekonk, which I do a lot of my events. And she has these shirts made up and kind of like one of her slogans is like, get your shift together.
100%. I need that shirt.
We'll help you get your shift together.
I love that. And so, from my perspective, in that workshop, I would then have them write down a story about a really great moment. Maybe it's the birth of a child, or maybe it is a marriage, or getting a raise, or graduating high school, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then I would say, okay, now let's talk about the shift that happened then. And actually, the shifts are very small. Yeah. To me, those are the respite moments. Those are the breathing moments. That's the space in between the breaths, the good times. Right? It gives us the replenishment to get through the challenging times or the challenging experiences. But it allows them to shift their mindset and see, oh my gosh, every challenge I've been through, I've learned something about myself. It's shifted me in just such a way. I've evolved in just such a way. And I'm trying to get people to realize evolution should not be feared. It should be embraced. You are not to be the same person the day you pass is the day you were born. That's
right.
actually the purpose of your life.
Right.
The purpose is to take in all of the experiences and evolve. That's
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Everybody thinks, oh, I can't find my purpose. I don't know what to do. I'm not a Nobel Peace Prize winner. I'm not a surgeon. What's my purpose? It's so simple. Open a door, give a smile, be kind. And
That's also, yeah.
when
But
life
that's
hands
also,
you challenges, grow. Even if it's the tiniest shift, you're
yeah.
meant to evolve.
That's also part of resistance in people's lives, though, and why people feel challenged is because they're projecting, right? They're, what should I do? When should I, where should I go? Or
It
they're,
never feels like enough.
or they're consumed with past, right? So they're never really present in the now, in this moment where life is only taking place right now,
Right.
in this moment. So, like, for me right now, only you and I and your viewers exist, and the words I'm saying, and right now. And when we think of past, it's usually with guilt. When we think of future, that could be fear related. So inevitably, and I'm going to say a saying from the 12-step program that you would hear around the halls that I frequented. If you have one leg in the past and one leg in the future, you are pissing all over the present.
100%.
Amen. That's it.
That's it.
So this is where we manifest. This is where miracles happen. This is the materialization of matter is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh. We
that's
could
what I
go on
learned from you.
forever.
Yeah.
As a coach, as an entrepreneur, and as a mother, I could go on for this forever, but the mother part of me, you talk about like being in 3 homes. We all have multiple roles. I have to be the doctor's appointment with my kid at 2:30.
I also have school pickup, girl.
I mean, it's just like we could do this forever, and then we're like, oh shit, mom time.
Yeah. I
We just
love
can.
that we can do it all, Stacey. I love that we can,
Yes.
that we just
Well,
do what
that's
we
that's
love.
the blessing, right? So
Yeah.
before we wrap up, let people know, I put on the bottom of the screen how people can find you, but once this
Great.
is stripped into a podcast, I want to make sure that I'm sharing it. It's
Thank you.
ascensiontogether.org is
Yes.
your website, www.ascensiontogether.org. And on Instagram, social media, Facebook, it's at Ascension Together,
Yes.
right? And I just thank you. I think anybody that's hearing your story that feels connected, I hope that they feel connected to reach out to you.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Facebook, Instagram, on your website. I did email you earlier last month and told you I actually had somebody relatively close to where you live that I actually think could benefit from your services. And
Thank you.
sure, I could work with that person too, but my lived experience is not theirs, but yours is much more similar. And I feel
Thank
like
you for that.
that's the ability to be seen and not feel different and just be loved, right? And so as practitioners, we can always be sharing what we do and connecting the dots for
That's
other
the
people
collaboration.
too. That's the collaboration,
That's what we
right?
do.
No competition, all collaboration. So
thank you so much for having me.
Such a blessing. And for people that are watching or listening, if they have questions, they can post it right here on the Facebook page and we will answer them. And if you have questions that JoJo wants to answer or can answer, drop them right there. Or if you just want to give some support, we'll take that too. So thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day.